Guys, welcome back to another video. In this video, we go down and we talk about Magnus Carlsen against David Anton Guijarro. Okay, so let's just jump right into this video. This is a long positional squeeze, a beautiful endgame. I wanted to demonstrate and show you. This was in Magnus Carlsen Invitational 2021. I hope you really enjoy it. Let's just get straight into it. So let me actually switch to this. Cool. Carlsen starts off with e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6. Really, the most interesting part of this is the endgame. So we're going to try to go to the endgame fast, but this is still, kind of book opening right here, d3. Now, Magnus Carlsen takes here, messes up the pawn structures, plays knight c3, and Magnus now wants to take this square away from his opponent's bishop, okay? So Magnus just takes a really positional approach to this game. Bishop b3, Magnus is like, hey, let's just trade off these bishops. And even though he has his doubled pawns, and you'll be like, hey, why is he doubling his pawns? Well, he can still control these key squares, f4 and d4 with his pawns, and that knight cannot get to those squares. Even if the knight could go to f8, e6, d4, and f4, because that's effectively what it looked like he was going to do with that backwards knight maneuver. So Carlsen fights against that. David ends up going to b6. Here comes e4 to kind of play a5 and take up more space. David's like, nah, I'm not going to let you kick my knight. Queen d2, and Carlsen is thinking about, hey, am I going to castle queen side, king side? What am I going to do? Carlsen just plays b3 and just stays calm. Now he plays g4, and Carlsen wants to basically take up more space, and he still doesn't want to show which way he's going to castle. Maybe Carlsen is like, hey, I'm just going to leave my king in the center, okay? Or maybe this knight's going to come here. We don't know yet. h5 happens, and now if you don't do anything, takes here there's a pin, right? So now black's threatened to win some material. Carlsen castles queenside, and now, if you take here and here, so let's just play this out. If you take here and here, and you're like, hey, I'm winning a pawn right here. Well, you might be winning a pawn, but now you're also getting into a lot of trouble. So your king is already losing the castling rights. That is pinned. And so it's not necessarily the best thing you could do in this position. Okay, so let's go here. All right, so now what happened in the game is knight d6. Okay, he relocates his knight. That knight is just going all over the place, right? It was on d7, b6, c8, d6. Now Carlsen is like, hey, you're not the only person that can move his knights backwards. I can too, and I will. And it looks like this knight might be going here, okay? And again, Carlsen is not super worried about losing this pawn because Carlsen might get an open file out of this. Okay, b6, queen c3, pressure here. So now if you take here and you win, well, not so fast because take c6 is going to be a check, and I can take your rook. Okay, so you can't do something like that. I win a lot of material. Okay, so let's go here. Okay, so now knight g3. Now knight's like, hey, I'm going to come to f5, takes, and castles queenside. Okay, here comes the knight to f5. Remember, I said it's going to come and it's going to make itself heard. Now there's pressure on g7 and queen is hit. So what's black going to do? Black just decides to take, white takes. And now white's argument is, hey, I'm actually creating a backwards pawn on g7 and I'm going to start putting pressure on the g7 square. So black goes king b7, just puts his king on a square where that c6 square is defended, right? Because white was threatening to take. Black plays queen f7. Now maybe this knight is being rerouted to c4. Takes on g6. Now, again, there's a new backwards pawn, the f6 pawn. White trades the knights, and white's like, hey, I have some good control over the light squares. And now white's like, let me switch my focus over to your f6 pawn. And the idea behind this is, hey, I might actually play a rook here and bring this other rook and double up on that file. And you have this backwards pawn, and I have a clear place to attack. Now, you look at the bar on the left-hand side, and you're like, hey, well, this is still equal. Yes, the computer says and the engine says it's equal, but as a human being, this is a really tough position to play where white clearly has a weakness where it's not so easy to attack white's weaknesses. Okay, rook f3, queen g7, rook f1, rook h2. Cool. So black is sneaking that rook in. White plays queen c3, and black plays rook e2. He's like, hey, if you try to do something funny, I'm going to take your e3 pawn. White's like, hey, let's just trade rooks. All right. Black plays queen g3, attacking the rook. And Carlsen is like, hey, I'm just going to defend my rook. I'm going to keep it simple. I'm going to attack your queen, attack it again. And I'm going to keep my eye on your f6 pawn because I don't want your f6 pawn to go anywhere, buddy. Rook h8, who knows? Like, maybe one day this queen can like start to sneak in if you're not looking, okay? Or queen f5, queen here. So watch out because there might be potential mating ideas brewing here. So, but black stays careful. Black plays queen g5. Now Carlsen plays queen f3, and these are like little sneaky moves, right? And the scary thing about this move is if you play something you're not careful about, well, you might get hit with queen h3 and you might be in a lot of trouble. The bar on the left side is already agreeing with me, and it's like, hey, that's actually looking like it's going to be mate. You cannot guard and block this diagonal. The only move you might have is f5, and I take, and now I'm up a pawn. I might play e4. I have 0 weaknesses, a pass pawn, and I'm up a pawn. So not good, right? These sneaky little threats might just finish the game off, right? So for example, if you get something like queen g1 and he's like, yeah, I'm going to pressure this, boom, and lights out, okay? So black plays queen g7 and attacks the rook, fair enough. So now you still have to watch out for anything like this, okay? So white plays queen h3 and he's like, hey, I might tickle you. Black plays rook d7, and black basically saying, because queen h3 is saying a couple of things. I can go rook h7. I can also go queen here. So black goes, hey, I'm going to protect the 7th rank, and I'm going to block your queen from getting to c8 because my rook is obviously protected, so you can't take. Rook e8. Black offers a queen trade, and white says, you know what? I'm going to trade queens with you, but on the account of undoubling my pawns and keeping your f6 pawn back here and maybe pressuring it later on. Okay, so now trades happen. White plays king c3, rook f8 just to keep a healthy pressure on this. Black will go ahead and defend that. And now white is also, so this rook is really active pressuring. This rook is like a little potato cooped up and defending. Black plays king b7. Okay, and now we have a little bit of shuffling back and forth, but b4, and white's like, Carlsen's like, hey, let's actually break things open, right? So takes, we dissolve all the pawns. So now no passers on the queen side. King b4, king c4, king b6. He's just shuffling back and forth. Carlsen is like, I'm just going to wait here and make a waiting move, c3. Black plays c5, e4. Carlsen is like, okay, cool. My pawns are looking pretty. King c6. Everything looks fine right now. Looks like nothing is really going on. Rook d7, rook e8, rook e7, rook f7, king b3. Boom. Okay, they're still shuffling. And now Carlsen is like, hey, I'm starting to get an idea. Okay, I'm starting to get an idea. And Carlsen is trying to play all over the board. So black has to be really careful because sometimes this king is going around and trying to threaten breaking in this way. And sometimes this king might be going and breaking for this way, while this rook is staying super active, threatening this pawn and this pawn at times. So black is just defense. All of it is defense. It's beautiful, right? If you pay attention to how Carlsen does this to people, he makes it look just so effortless. But David is in a lot of pain probably playing this game, while Carlsen is just torturing the guy, right? He's just moving back and forth, making amazing moves, and he makes it look effortless, okay? So this is psychologically a really difficult position to defend. And keep in mind, they're about like 50, 60 moves in. This is an 85 move game. Now Carlsen is like, hey, I'm heading this way. And once he heads this way, I mean, already black is starting to get into a lot of trouble because if he's not careful, this king is coming here. This rook is, coming here. There are tons of weaknesses. These doubled pawns are black's biggest weakness right now. So rook d8, he's keeping a pressure here, but now rook a7, and okay, I'm pressuring c7. What are you going to do? So he checks, king moves, and he goes and is super passive and goes to defend it. Well, if you go to defend that, I'm just going to attack this pawn. Okay, now what are you going to do? So he loses the pawn. Okay, now king comes to attack the rook. The rook's like, Carlsen's like, I'm going to move my rook away. And he's like, yeah, I'm going to make my rook active. Well, no, you're not. C5 is going to hit you. King is going to go back. Now rook a7 is going to hit you. And this is where it's kind of already beginning to be lights out, you guys, because this is really, really tough, right? Because you're cut off. Your king is cut off from the game. You are down a pawn. You have your weakness on f6 and c6. And white's king can go this way, or white's king can go this way. And there's not much you can do because white will have mating threats. White will be able to go here and here with his rook and attack both of these pawns. I mean, this is just really, really terrible. So super passive. Rook h6, king e3, king d2, king c3. And this is where Anton Guijarro decides to throw in the towel and resign the game, because what can he really do here, right? There's not much that he can do because this is going. So like if we just played this out for a couple of more moves, okay. Now this pawn is falling. This king is going here and here. And even if he gets his rook here, right? Let's go. I mean, it doesn't matter where that king goes, right? There's this pawn falling. I have these connected passed pawns, and I'm going to just start throwing them up and racing them. There's not much that you can do here. So it was at this moment, after, I believe, king c3, when David threw in the towel and resigned. Absolutely brilliant, magnificent masterpiece played very recently by Magnus Carlsen, March 13th, actually, 2021, and just a masterpiece, right? This is an absolutely brilliant textbook endgame. It was a lot of fun to watch and really, really accurate, right? I mean, this is crazy, but the computer says that this is white played with 96% accuracy while black played with 93% accuracy. So imagine how frustrating it must be to play with 93% accuracy, an 85 move game, and lose. This is where Carlsen's strength is. He squeezes water from stone, and there was no win here, and Carlsen brought out that win and made it happen. So brilliant game. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this. And with that said, I'll see you in the next video.